to those that might be turning in for the fourth time,
Yeah, I think it's fourth or fifth. I don't know. We've lost count.
We're lost count. We are having some technical challenges. Bringing Shane to you live this week so we can dig into this past week's sermon. Again, we're at the Potomac District. Potomac, did I get it right this time?
Yeah.
All right. Whew. District Conference of the Assemblies of God.
Yeah.
You're at a conference with 300-400 other pastors and church leaders, learning some new skills and capabilities and ideas and all sorts of stuff, right?
It's been a great conference. Thanks for tuning in and for the fifth or whatever amount of times you did. And I appreciate you guys finding me this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Shane was delivering this the final segment of a 4-part series on culture shock. This week's sermon was titled "Make a Difference," and I had just asked the very first question when all technologies went kablooey.
Yeah.
Mainly because the sun was overheating everything, and so we had to move inside. But Shane, that question that I asked you was, you mentioned that we need to be mindful of the moments that God gives us to make a difference in people's lives. How do we become more mindful of that, though, given the many distractions and so forth that we have within our day?
Yeah, I think one of the things is to realize why it's so distracting and just recognize that there are moments coming at us constantly, non-stop. One of my favorite authors, Erwin McManus, I've referenced him before for other books, but he wrote a book called Chasing Daylight. And in Chasing Daylight, Erwin McManus points out that there are about 775,000 moments or decisions that an adult will make in their lifetime.
That's a lot. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy overwhelming. And that's part of the reason why it's so hard to step into moments is because there are so many of them. So many moments. So how in the world do we recognize this is the moment I need to step into? What does God want to do? And by the way, you'll only regret, McManus points out, 143,000 of those.
Oh, is that all?
That's all.
Just 143,000 decisions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
I didn't even know I had that many regrets.
Why am I sweating?
But you know this in your life. Your life is shaped by moments. In fact, I've lived on this earth for 50 years, and I can probably point to about maybe 3 to 6 life-changing moments that I've had throughout my life that have shaped me. So how do we recognize and do a better job stepping into it? I think one thing is realize that there are moments non-stop. There are moments around us all the time. And if we could stop and slow down for a moment and begin to think within a moment, okay, I know I've just said moment like 30,000 times, but we all are faced with decisions every day. In fact, you face some judgments. The average adult faces 27 decisions or judgments a day. It started with how many times you hit your snooze alarm this morning. Whether you hit it twice or 3 times, or you decided to play, like Jim, place it across the room so that you have to get up out of bed to stop your phone. Isn't that what you said?
Yes, especially in winter. It's always good to put your phone on the other side of the room in winter to get you out of the bed. Yeah.
So these decisions we're faced with nonstop. If we could slow down, instead of reacting to a moment and begin creating in a moment, what potential impact could we have? And we talked about this Sunday, that this is what God measured. God measures how we use our time by how impactful a moment might be. You think about your own life. Most of the most impactful moments of your life is not a what, but a who. It's a who.
Yeah.
How powerful was it when someone stepped into a moment in your life and reached out to you? And rather than reacting constantly to this bombardment that's happening of moments after moments, we become immune to it. And we need to start recognizing, it's the old adage, slow down and smell the roses, right?
Yeah.
It's just slowing down and looking at things differently. Jesus, the tension of the kingdom of heaven has always existed within a culture. When Jesus introduced the kingdom principles back in his day, and when we introduce them today to our culture, there's the same tension. And one of those tensions is what we do with our time. God desires for us to step into a moment, instead of reacting to it, to create something in a moment that actually can last. For instance, you have somebody come up to you on the street. You have an illustration of a traffic accident.
Yeah.
This just happened to me last night on my way to pick up Sue at the airport coming in from Costa Rica. The
Really?
Costa Rica team came in, and I was following somebody who was driving all over the road, and it turns out that this was a drunk driver, and I watched and witnessed an accident.
Oh gosh.
You know, when that kind of thing happens, you're worried about your safety, you're worried about the thing, you're reacting.
Right.
But what can I do to step into that moment and create something? Someone approaches you, I use that illustration Sunday. Whatever it is, you're faced with so many of them. Slow down, begin to look at a moment and say, how can I create something in this moment that could last?
I guess that kind of reinforces, in it Paul it says pray continuously too, and I think if we kind of adopt that in our mindset, make a habit of praying continuously, that would help us to see those moments a little bit better and help us do something else you challenged us to do, and that was to better measure what God measures. So in kind of similar vein, how might we potentially be more mindful of what it is that God matters to God from a measurement standpoint as well?
Well, Jim, you hit the nail on the head, and what a great segue to what I was thinking is, if you're in a conversation with God, you have a much higher chance of him going, hold on one second, Jim. Hey, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you go out and reach out to this person over here?
Yeah.
They have a need. If you are ignoring God, that's problem number one. If you're not in continual, you said, as Paul said, pray continually. If we're not in a continual conversation with God, then we're continually going to miss opportunities with God. Makes sense? So let me just say that one more time. If we're not in a conversation continually with God, then we're continually going to miss moments with God. And so that's a huge paradigm shift, to stay in a conversation with God so he can point out needs around me. And then I'm going to say this because I know I'm a pastor, and of course I'm going to say this, but the local church is the bride of Christ. There's nothing more important to God than the local church. And you can make a difference in moments just by being involved with what your local church is doing. Because that's their mission, is to step into every moment. In fact, their mission is more than that, to create moments for people to step into. If you just step into the moments that your local church is creating to make a difference, the difference can be monumental. Monumental. And I know we can debate about where we make a difference, and that's another question perhaps, but that's a big. Stay in conversation with God and stay engaged with the local church.
It kind of makes me think of the analogy of if we're on a team, like a sports team, you can't play the game, especially as a team, if you're not in communication with your coach, right? It's just going to be impossible.
I love the way you think, Jim.
He loves sports.
I love sports analogies. You know how I feel about it.
And so I think one other thing that was interesting in your sermon Sunday is you talked about how Jesus, with such little time, only lived to be 33, had a 3-year ministry, was in the grave 3 days, started the church with just 12, and yet it has thrived for over 2,000 years. During that time, kingdoms have fallen. Companies that we used to think would be around, like perhaps Sears, Blockbuster, Woolworths, remember Woolworths? Are all gone and so forth. So how should the thriving of the church for over 2,000 years, in contrast to all those things failing, influence our prioritization of moments, and when, where, and how we choose to make a difference?
First of all, we have to recognize why that's true.
Okay.
I mean, just take a moment and think about it. All the companies that you watch evaporate, and if you're a history buff, you know history, that entire empires have risen and fallen. Empires that would be around forever, ruling. Maybe there's some lasting impact of that. So why is it that you said 3 days, the fact that Jesus shows up for 33 years of his life, 3 years ministry with 12 people, how does that change the world? And the answer is because of who is behind it, not what's behind it. We think strategy.
Yeah.
Give us that strategy. Can you write a book about that?
That's
Because man, it's a bestseller.
Do a SWOT analysis,
Yes.
put your Gantt chart together, fill out your project. Yeah, that's not the way Jesus did it, right?
We think what
Yeah,
instead of who.
yeah.
Think about this. Jesus said, "I will build my church." It literally, Jesus could be doing anything. He's not. His number one job isn't directing the angels in heaven, greeting people as they come. He said, "This is my number one focus. The church, my body," he calls it. In fact, beyond that, he prioritizes it. And in Scripture, he calls the church his bride. So there is a prioritization that happens with God. This is his full-time gig, okay? 24/7, 365, he builds his church. It will never go away because of who's behind it, not what's behind it. So if we realize that, then how could we not be involved in the local church? I know I'm about to go crazy and come through the screen right now and say, how could you not be involved with pouring your life into the very thing that Jesus himself said, this is my full-time gig. This is my full-time priority. It's my highest priority.
Yeah.
That's what, and obviously I'm passionate about it.
And you know it's going to be everlasting too. That's the cool thing. I mean, we all want to matter, right? We all want significance, and to be able to be part of something that's going to be around forever, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shane, if you used this part of Scripture where Jesus talks about the gates of hell will not prevail, and so you highlighted there that gates are a defensive mechanism when it comes to battle and protection and all that sort of stuff. So if gates are defensive, can Satan and the powers of hell ever take the offensive? And if not, why does it so often seem that hell gets the upper hand sometimes? That Satan's kind of on the loose and seems to be gaining ground. Is it the church's fault? That's a loaded question, I know.
Yes. It's your fault, Jim.
Okay, I'll take the blame.
First of all, for those of you listening right now, you're going, "Oh my gosh, what have I just?"
Where's this
tuned into?"
conversation gone? Yeah.
This is the devil Facebook Live here. It makes sense that if God exists, that there is this natural goodness in the world. There's also an evil that exists. And if you read about it in this collection of works in the Bible, and everyone has written and under the inspiration of God to bring us the story of God, there has been a story of God overcoming evil. But the fact that there is evil to begin with means that they are actively at work. So yes, to answer your question, yes, they can be on the offensive.
Okay.
The enemy can be on the offensive and looks for ways and opportunities and builds these walls, these gates. The enemy builds gates around people. Now it's figuratively speaking. We can't see or touch these walls. But have you ever met somebody who just can't get this out of their mind? They can't think any other way? People who, for instance, have been abused in their life.
Yeah.
We've heard this phrase before. The abused abuse. Why is that? The reason why is because the enemy has built a gate around the impact of abuse. And that impact captures us and holds us captive. And we cannot break free of it.
Yeah.
It's generations after generations. This happens over and over again, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. That is just one example of a huge gate that the enemy has built. And so it takes offensive and taking ground, but it builds a defense. But Jesus told us that there's no defense that the offense of the church cannot break down.
Gotcha.
It's impossible. So that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
There's no gate that the enemy can build around the heart or mind of any person that the church cannot break through. And it will not prevail. The gates of hell will not overcome the church because God is building it and because he's given us the key
Yeah.
to be able to step in and actually unlock and free somebody to be able to see things differently and step into a moment that would overwhelm all the moments of the past and make the moments of the future completely different.
What a new perspective that brings to think that we've been given these keys by Jesus to actively go after these gates and unlock them. So my question for you, my next one is, what must the church, and I don't mean the church as an institution, but as the individuals that comprise a church, like all the members of West End Assembly of God, for instance, what must we do better than we are now to properly use these keys to unlock these gates that Satan's building around our communities?
Well, first of all, I think we do this so well already, but just to be consciously aware of the way people think, and the only way we can discover that is actually to enter into relationship with people who are struggling. If you are willing to step into a moment with somebody, there's a conversation you're having at work today perhaps, that could be the seed of something, of someone opening up to you and describing the gate without them realizing it, describing where they come from, describing the way they think. If we are willing to listen, we will hear where the gate exists. And so I think that's the first thing is just be willing to listen and then invite them to something that they don't have to be held captive. Can you change the fact that you've had this abuse in your life? Can you change the fact? No, you can't. You can't change the tragedy, but you can experience a triumph in your future over that tragedy and have God step into this moment with you. So if we begin to share this with people, we have to listen. We have to be willing to hear where's the gate.
Gotcha.
Then share with them the truth. And by the way, the church gives tools for you to be able to do all the time. I think one of the most powerful keys of hope to give to someone who has a gate around them that the enemy has built is the power of the story of God actually setting someone free. We tell stories in our church. As you know, in fact, West End Assembly of God has been known to be a storytelling church. And I don't mean like the fib kind of story. I mean telling the story of God in creative ways. If you come to our Christmas production, every year over 25,000 people experience the same story told in a creative way.
Well, there's the My Story Project too.
The My Story Project is just what I was going to say, Jim.
Oh, okay,
is that,
sorry.
No, that's great.
Jump to it.
That's perfect.
It's reading his mind. Yes, the mystoryproject.com for those that don't know.
So we have now, there's nothing more creative than God working in someone's life.
Yeah.
And so we just begin to collect stories of God working in people's lives. And we have them, you can go to this website. It's just a simple tool. It's not a promotion. I'm actually giving you a tool. This is a tool for our entire church. In fact, don't have to be in our church. If you're listening today, you have nothing to do with our church. Go to this website, themystoryproject.com. Themystoryproject.com. This is why. Because every story told on that are real people. In fact, we know them. They're real people who God has delivered from some gate in their life. That's real.
Yeah.
You can't deny that. You may or may not believe what we believe, but you can't deny someone's experience of being set free of something in their life, of something that God has done. So we're just collecting these stories. So one tool we can do as people is just share those.
Yeah.
Social media
That's
feed.
what they're there for, right? Share them out.
Go and subscribe on themystoryproject.com. You'll get a new story every month. In fact, many stories in a month, but we showcase one of them each month in our church through a video, but then we have a podcast that interviews and goes deeper with those people. We have stories in written word about many people whose lives are being changed and people's entire life has been changed. What was the difference? Go listen to a story. And if you're someone who follows God, or whether you're not, there's nothing more powerful than sharing a story. There's nothing more hopeful you can give in making a difference in this world than telling a true, real story of someone's life that has been completely, totally changed.
Wow.
That's powerful.
Thanks for that reminder of how we make those tools available. I think that's very helpful. It's something we can easily overlook, and those are moments that we can share out in other people's lives.
Absolutely,
too.
absolutely.
Shane, one final question, so you can get back to this conference and enjoy your fellowship and time with all those other hundreds of other church leaders. But one thing you ended your sermon with that was just unbelievable. You said, "You are the difference." So you were saying, don't keep waiting for God to make a difference in your life or in the lives of others. You are the difference that God wants to make. So my question to you is, what are some areas, some ways that the church is admittedly perhaps waiting for God to move and make a difference when we already have the key and the context to be on the move for Him?
Well, I think for one thing, we usually, it's not a bad thing. We utilize the tools of the church. We just mentioned one.
Right.
The My Story Project, that's a tool that the church is utilizing. Our growth track, inviting someone to stay an hour after church and learn how they can be integrated into this all-important project of God called the local church, and to step into that moment. We provide discipleship tools or ways to learn and grow in God, and constant classes and small groups and ministries, opportunities, ways to serve. But they're not the only ones. But I would say that since Jesus himself identified his full-time priority and responsibility of building his church, that there isn't anything else that could be more important than for you to step into a moment and figure out how can you step into your local church. It doesn't have to be our church, but step into a local church. I tell people this all the time. If you're not involved in our church, then maybe this isn't the church for you.
Sure.
I just want you to be involved. I want you to take ownership and step into and just feel and experience what it is to step into partnership with the God of the universe to build his church. So there are some ways we can do that and take advantage of the local church and what they're doing. Bring people to the local church. Share the local church. You could literally just post every single day something that your church is posting. If it's a story, I don't mean a promotion about your church, but share something that God is doing that's real. That's why I love these stories, to share those. But there are many ways you can do that. Maybe just your own story. Consider sharing your own story with somebody today. What if you stepped into a moment and said, and just came up with a way to describe something that's happening in your life, a way that you used to think, relating to somebody at work, relating to somebody at school, taking advantage of a conversation online, and step into that moment and share something real from your life that God is doing. People think they have to be perfect to do that.
Or tell their whole story.
Yeah, or tell their whole story.
No, you don't.
Please
It's
don't.
okay.
Please
That's
don't
right.
do that.
That's right.
Nobody wants
you don't
to
have
do
to.
But all you have to do is just be real.
Yeah.
Just be real with people and share what God is doing in you. God will build his church. But we have to stop waiting on God to make a difference and start realizing that we are the difference that God is making. If you don't step into that moment, if you don't take that opportunity, then you are missing out on becoming the difference that God desires to make in someone else.
And so the next series, in fact, you're going to be helping us to be moved into making differences in people's lives, aren't you?
Yeah, apparently I'm into M's right now. I don't know. But our next sermon series, thank you for that. Our next sermon series starts this coming Sunday. It's called Moved, and we're going to talk about what are the things that should move us, what are the things that move Jesus himself. We're going to take a look at those. In fact, our very own Jamel Jones is going to be in the house this Sunday, bringing the word. I'm so excited. I'm actually going to be preaching at one of our partner churches, United Church in Adam Martino. Can't wait to hang out with my friends at United Church. But Jamel is going to be kicking off this series called Moved, and we're going to talk about what moves Jesus. What moved Jesus?
Yeah.
Those ought to be some things that we should pay attention to.
Definitely. Very good. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. That's this Sunday at 10 a.m. Join us on site or online to be able to catch that message from Jamel. We'll certainly miss you this Sunday, but it's great to be able to loan you out to United for a week.
Yeah.
Hi to Adam and the gang there. Hopefully they're watching the live every now and then. So we'll hope you have a great time there.
Awesome.
And,
Can't wait.
This will be an exciting new series, a 5-week series, correct?
Yes,
I think
that's
we're
right.
looking at. Very good. Well, thanks, Shane, for stepping out of the conference.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Especially with the technical challenges, but I'm glad to see we made it through.
Thanks for tuning in 20 times.
That's right. Very good. And we thank you very much for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.